Just imagine a helicopter flying over your head and suddenly happen to drop a bag full of cash. And now you own this money and can spend it the way you want, with no more worries of returning it to anyone. With the coronavirus hit economy failing deeper and deeper into a crisis with each passing day, this dropping of the cash load on the people is the only possible option left with the governments these days. With no quick escape in sight for COVID-ravaged economies, authorities the world over are going back to the drawing board to find strategies to deal with this nightmare. One such strategy doing the round is the helicopter money. Helicopter money basically involves non-repayable money transfer from the central bank to the government, followed by the government giving it to the masses. It seeks to push people into spending more and thereby boost the sagging economy. But what does this bloody helicopter money stand for? Is it really about dropping money from a chopper like a bird poops? Well, yes, but with a slight difference. The helicopter money is an unconventional monetary policy tool aimed at bringing a flagging economy back on track. It involves printing large sum of money and distributing it to the public. Yeah, it's that easy. Just give it away like a charity to the masses. American economist Milton Friedman coined this term. It basically denotes a helicopter dropping money from the sky. Milton Friedman used the term to signify unexpectedly dumping money onto a struggling economy with the intention to shock it out of a deep slump. Under such a policy, a central bank directly increases the money supply and where the government distribute the new cash to the population with the aim of boosting demand and inflation. Now, you might be thinking of how does this helicopter money works? Well, the central bank prints money and give it to the central government for distribution to individuals or corporates directly as cash or in terms of tax cuts. Money can be transferred to the government as the central bank buys primary issuance of government bonds. But this method can work best in an extremely low interest rate environment. Also, it will increase the government debt. But proponent of helicopter money theory explains that since the central bank is nothing but an arm of the government itself, so when the balance sheet of the government and the central bank are consolidated, the bonds held by the central bank on the asset side will be cancelled by the same bond held by the liability side of the government. Also, the future cash flow to the government through higher tax revenue with demand getting stimulated will enable it to repay the debt. Now, is this helicopter money same as quantitative easing? Well, quantitative easing also involves the use of printed money by central banks to buy government bonds. But not every economist views the money used in quantitative easing as helicopter money. It sure means printing money to monetize the government deficits. But the government has to pay back for the assets that the central bank buys. Helicopter money is also different from the central bank directly financing the debt of a government. हेलीकॉप्टर मनी के तहत देश का सेंट्रल बैंक बड़े पैमाने पर नोटों की छपाई करता है और सरकार को दे देता है और सरकार आगे इसे लोगों के ऊपर खर्च कर देती है। हेलीकॉप्टर मनी के तहत दिया गया पैसा सरकार को सेंट्रल बैंक को रिफंड नहीं करना पड़ता, जबकि क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग के तहत सेंट्रल बैंक नोटों की छपाई करता है और सरकार को दे देता है, लेकिन सेंट्रल बैंक सरकारी बॉन्ड खरीदता है, तभी सरकार को पैसे देता है। बाद में सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट्स को ये बॉन्ड रिजर्व बैंक से वापस खरीदने पड़ते हैं और रिजर्व बैंक से लिया पैसा लौटाना पड़ता है। तो ये फ़र्क है क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग में और हेलीकॉप्टर मनी में। हेलीकॉप्टर मनी में सरकार आरबीआई से पैसे लेगी, लोगों को बांट देगी और सरकार को आरबीआई को कुछ भी नहीं देना। लेकिन क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग के अंदर सरकार आरबीआई से लेती है पैसे बॉन्ड इशू करके और उसके बाद लोगों पर खर्च करती है, लेकिन बाद में सरकार को वो पैसा आरबीआई को चुकाना पड़ता है। That's the difference. Money transfer to the center can also happen by RBI directly giving the money to the central government by using the central bank's existing reserves or equity. There are many supporters for this route of money transfer as well. अभी कुछ दिन पहले आरबीआई ने कई हजार करोड़ रुपए, आई थिंक 40,000 करोड़ रुपए सरकार को दिए। There was a lot of controversy around it कि क्या वो पैसे देना जायज़ था या नहीं था। I'm not going into that detail क्योंकि वो पैसा at the end of the day वो पैसा सरकार का है and it's the government that decides कि where the money should be spent. While advanced economies are not using helicopter money in the original sense, as most of their liquidity infusion is through secondary market and they are already printing money to buy these securities. As the US Federal Reserve's balance sheet has bloated from $4 trillion in February to $6 trillion currently. Federal Reserve ने फैब में उसने $4 ट्रिलियन इन्फ्यूज़ किए थे, अब वो बढ़कर वो पैसा $6 ट्रिलियन हो चुका है। पहले $4 ट्रिलियन से बढ़कर $6 ट्रिलियन, $2 ट्रिलियन का स्टिमुलस दिया है। The economic stimulus of $2 trillion by the Federal Reserve is quite similar to the helicopter money. But helicopter money is not problem-free either. One of the primary concerns with the helicopter money is that it causes inflation. But this problem may not arise in the current scenario, where demand is at its lowest, with individuals postponing their discretionary purchases, capital expenditure plans postponed for at least a year, and government likely to use money reserved for capital expenditure on providing health care. अभी भी कोरोना के केसेस लगातार बढ़ रहे हैं और गवर्नमेंट को कहीं ना कहीं से पैसा जुगाड़ करके हेल्थ केयर में देना पड़ेगा। Otherwise, this pandemic can really turn severe. And with credit growth also slackening, the threat of inflationary effect from this method could be minimal. क्योंकि आज की तारीख में इंडिया के अंदर डिमांड बहुत कम है और जब डिमांड कम होती है तो इन्फ्लेशन कम रहती है। हमारी इन्फ्लेशन आज की तारीख में व्हेन आई एम रिकॉर्डिंग दिस, इन्फ्लेशन कंट्रोल में है गवर्नमेंट के। तो आज हेलीकॉप्टर मनी कैन बी इशूड इन द इकोनॉमी, क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग की जा सकती है। और अभी हम डिस्कस करेंगे कि वो 20 लाख करोड़ रुपए सरकार ने दिया था 2 महीने पहले, क्या वो क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग या इसके तहत आता है? नहीं आता, टू बी श्योर नहीं आता। The bigger problem, however, is the impact it can have on the currency value. ये दिक्कत हो सकती है। Typically, advanced economies such as the US or Canada or the European Union are better placed to print unlimited quantities of money to fund expenditure. This is because they have hard currencies. They are widely used to settle international transactions and hence are consistently in demand. हमारी जो करेंसी है उसकी डिमांड बहुत कम है, इसी वजह से जो हमारा एक्सचेंज रेट है वो भी बहुत कम रहता है। जबकि जो डॉलर है या पाउंड है या यूरो है उनकी डिमांड बहुत हाई रहती है। दे कैन अफोर्ड टू प्रिंट एज मच मनी एज दे वांट, क्योंकि उनकी डिमांड नहीं घटेगी, डिमांड और बढ़ेगी उनकी। बट इन केस ऑफ इंडिया there is likely to be an impact on the rupee if the center uses this mean. Now that the foreign portfolio investors have already pulling money out of Indian debt securities, government may consider this option of dropping helicopter money in the economy. देखना ये है गवर्नमेंट कब करेगी। The Modi government has been quite cautious about its expenditure in this crisis. It has taken initial measures of providing food to all needy families and distributed 1,000 rupees to poor citizens, widows and disabled people, and rupees 500 per month to women Jan Dhan account holders. This will, however, not replenish the income lost through the lockdown. आप सिर्फ खाने के पैसे दे सकते हो, 1000 रुपये एक महीना देने से लोगों की इकोनॉमी उतनी नहीं सुधर सकती। उनकी जॉब जा चुकी लोगों की, किसी का 20,000 का नुकसान हो रहा है महीने में, तो यू कैन नॉट गिव देम 1000 रुपीज़ एंड मेक देम सर्वाइव। According to estimates of various research outfits, the cost of the entire lockdown up to July could be around 12 to 15 lakh crore rupees, amounting to 6 to 7% of GDP. The RBI has announced a series of measures to reduce the burden on businesses and individuals in repaying their loans, and even increased their moratorium on the payment of loans by 2 months. And this increase in loan moratorium had saved the Big Bazaar, previously owned by Kishore Biyani, from going bankrupt. Kishore Biyani led Big Bazaar Future Group 2 महीने पहले ही bankrupt हो जाता, क्योंकि उनके पास इंटरेस्ट पे करने के पैसे ही नहीं थे उनके लोन पर। 16,000 करोड़ का डिफ़ॉल्ट हो चुका था। लेकिन सरकार ने कोरोना की वजह से जो 2 महीने के लिए मॉरेटोरियम बढ़ा दिया, उसकी वजह से किशोर बियानी बच गए। RBI also made sure that the banks have enough money to lend more to businesses and households by reducing the statutory reserve requirements, the SLR and the repo rates, and slew of other measures. However, the problem with RBI's liquidity infusion is that it depends on the banks to borrow money from the RBI to lend to distressed businesses. Given the rising NPAs, the non-performing assets, the banks may not lend further. They are unlikely to toe the line. It's obvious that more money needs to be distributed to poorer households that have lost their livelihood in the lockdown period. And that's the only way the economy could see a boost in the demand. Government can meet these expenses by cutting government expenditure, using unclaimed balances under various heads and borrowing more from the market. But it may ultimately have to go for a deficit monetization. While helicopter money may not be used just yet, the center will look closely at all the other available means. Though our government initiated a whopping $20 trillion of the COVID package, but that was largely a cheap loan strategy to industries. But the problem with this package is that how can that boost the sales of a product? Only rise in consumption can boost the sales and not the cheap loan. So just imagine, when the demand is not there due to lack of job or cash or insecurity about the future prospect, then how can a loan, however cheap it is, can boost the demand? Well, to create demand, you got to release cash in the economy that has already been reeling under several ill-executed financial reforms like demonetization, like GST, that shrunk the demand in the country due to the lack of cash. There have been a lot of users of this phenomena of dropping helicopter money in the economy. Australia was prompt in dropping money in the economy at the earliest to immune itself from the global financial crisis 2008. And that's how Australia prevented itself from the recession. To watch that video of mine about Australian immunity from global financial crisis, click the link below. Later, America and the European Union followed this money drop via helicopter to get themselves out of the recession, and that shook the core of the American financial sector. Japan is deploying helicopter money already to fight the COVID recession at the earliest. According to some analysts, the yield curve control that Japan is resorting to is basically a type of helicopter money only. That is because the strategy lets the Japanese government spend more without having to worry about the bond yields jumping. Dropping free money or helicopter money is probably the easiest way to get yourself out of the recession, as it would boost the consumption and that would amount to the boost in the demand. And that would further lead to the rise in private investments, as companies would expand their production to meet the growing demand. And then your cheap loan package would save the day for MSMEs and private companies. Extending loans without a demand in the economy is not just a waste of public money but a serious loss to the exchequer, as the companies and proprietors might use the cheap loan for their personal consumption and not for the business expansion as government intended for. And this consumption of a debt for household would stuck them into a debt trap in the long run. Well, the center has a plethora of conventional means to make its stimulus of 20 lakh crore effective and ramp up an ailing economy. But the only difference is when and how government plans to do that.